Welcome to the Pope Paul VI Learning Resource Center at the Catholic University of Eastern Africa here in Nairobi. My name is Eric Latif of Spice FM and KTN News.
And I'm Yvonne Okwara of Citizen Television. Welcome to the second of two presidential debates between the four presidential candidates cleared to run for president in the forthcoming election. This is the last of 6 national televised debates organized through a joint media presidential debates initiative bringing together literally the entire Kenyan media fraternity.
The candidates participating in the debate tonight have agreed to the rules and guidelines requiring them to conduct themselves with utmost decorum, address each other with respect, and extend honor to viewers watching this debate live across all of Kenya's broadcast media platforms.
The candidates in the debate have also agreed to observe the highest standards of ethics in their conduct on the debate platform. The candidates are not permitted to carry or refer to their mobile phones or to wear any listening devices, including earphones. Medically recommended hearing aids are exempt from this, but luckily we have
in this debate.
Indeed, but in keeping with the traditions of the Joint Media Presidential Debates Initiative since 2013, the debate is on. And we now make one exception to permit the audience here in the auditorium to help us welcome Dr. William Ruto, the UDA presidential candidate, to the stage.
Your Excellency Deputy President, Honorable Ruto, thank you very much for honoring Kenyans with this appearance. We shall conduct a series of question and answer, and whose topics have already been shared with you. We'll give you 2 minutes to begin with your opening statement before we go to the main thrust of the questions tonight.
Thank you very much. William Ruto, a husband, to my dear wife Rachel, who is in this audience, a father, to my children who are also joining me this evening in this debate, the sitting Deputy President of Kenya, a presidential candidate in this election, and I have come here to participate in this debate because I have presented myself as a presidential candidate, knowing very well where our country is. We are a country that is faced with mounting challenges. We have a huge track record of what we have achieved, but there is tremendous opportunity out there for more to be achieved. I believe that this is a Mama Mboga moment. We have 5 million young people who are not working. We have 15 million Kenyans who today are blacklisted in CRB. We have 10 million citizens who have no access to credit in the micro and small enterprise sector. And I believe I am the candidate with a plan to be able to get Kenya to the next level.
Thank you, Honorable Ruto, for your opening statement. Let's get right into the first topic of discussion here tonight, and that is the cost of living, something that many Kenyans are concerned about tonight. At the moment, Honorable Ruto, we currently have 3 subsidies in place, on fuel, on unga, on fertilizer, all aimed at dealing with the cost of living. Do you believe that subsidies are the way to go and are the right approach at this moment to deal with this issue?
I believe that subsidies can alleviate the problem to an extent. especially when we find ourselves in the situation where we are. My position is that we find ourselves at this port because there are certain things we didn't do right. We had a Big Four plan because we foresaw this situation. We were here in 2017. We decided then that it is proper to formulate a plan that included matters food security. If you look at the 4 pillars of the Big Four plan, one of them was agriculture and food security and nutrition. Unfortunately, that plan fell apart. It was actually sabotaged. So we find ourselves in this space because, one, we didn't capitalize our agricultural sector. We actually removed the fertilizer subsidy program that existed, which we just reinstated, I think, 3 months ago. Why did we withdraw it in the first place? Because to deal with the cost of living, you just have to increase agricultural productivity. And to increase agricultural productivity, you need to do 3 things. Number 1, make sure farmers have access to inputs, fertilizer, seeds, pesticides. Make sure the farmers have the necessary capital to be able to do the farming. And 3, make sure they have access to markets that are not rigged. Unfortunately, we didn't do that, and that's why we find ourselves in the situation we're in. So that's why in our plan, as Kenya Kwanza, we have set out with clarity what we need to do. We have put in place a 30 billion revolving fund to make sure that farmers have access to inputs. We have added a 12 billion shilling expenditure on agricultural extension, because it's not just enough to have inputs. It's also important for farmers to use the latest information on how to get our farming right and increase the productivity of every farmer. And the statistics show, with access to fertilizer, with access to certified seed, with access to capital, a farmer who produces 5 bags can produce 15. So we can actually double, if not triple, our agricultural output. What that means is that the 2 million farmers who today are net importers of food themselves can actually produce surplus. And we can make sure that we have sufficient supply that ensures that the prices are reasonable for everybody. So the real solution to the cost of living, especially on matters food, because we all understand the biggest contributor to the high cost of living is the cost of food. The average expenditure of families is 52% of their income. In fact, poorer families spend between 60 and 65% of their income on food. So dealing with the cost of food significantly deals with the challenge of high cost of living.
Honorable Deputy President, if I may just interject, what you say today has also been said by you before. In the first term of your administration, you pledged the same, that you are going to deal with agriculture, you're going to support farmers, and that's when the first fertilizer subsidy was rolled in before it was embroiled in scandal. And you'd also promised the Galana Kulalu project. When you say today that the food security aspect of the Big Four agenda was sabotaged, what exactly do you mean? What failed in the Big Four agenda with regards to food security?
Precisely that. It was sabotaged.
By who and how?
Because You know as well as I do that we never got to implement that plan. Immediately, we changed course, and the whole Big Four plan was shelved. And we went on a tangent because of the handshake equation. We went to handshake, to BBI. We have always supported the farmers.
Honorable Ruto, I'd like to speak about another issue that is a contributing factor to the cost of living, and that is the high cost of fuel in the country. What do you propose to do with that? Because there's also a current subsidy in place for that. What do you think is the solution to the rising cost of fuel, which, as you know, drives the cost of a number of other products?
I think the first thing that we need to do is to look at the taxes, because 50% almost of the cost of fuel in Kenya is taxes. I think it's time as a country we looked at, I think there are 15 different taxes on fuel. And I think it's time we looked at how else do we raise revenue.
Which taxes would you be proposing to remove from fuel, the cost of fuel?
I think majority of the taxes that are in that bracket, I think there are almost 15 different taxes that are there. I do not have the specifics, but those 15, I think we need to interrogate these 15 different taxes. Which ones can we put aside so that, like other countries, we can limit the taxation on fuel? Take for example,
let me yes, okay.
Take for example VAT.
Correct.
I think we need to rethink taxation, VAT taxation on fuel. That was the latest inclusion of taxes on fuel, and I think it was very controversial.
Yeah, Honorable Ruto, VAT on petroleum products was indeed controversial. Let me take you back to 2013 when VAT was imposed on this as a condition by IMF. At the time, then Majority Leader Aden Duale said, and I quote, "The 181 members have been convinced by our party leader and our deputy party leader on the rationale of 8% VAT on petroleum products." He went on to say, 181 is a very big number and we will convince our members from the NASA side. So you, at this point in the year 2015, I believe, when this was passed, were pushing for 8% to be added on VAT. Today, you are saying you want to abolish VAT on petroleum products. Why should Kenyans believe you today?
Why wouldn't they? I mean, we live in a dynamic country, and it's only fools who don't change their mind. If you are in a situation where the price of fuel has gone to 160, I mean, it's time to think. I mean, when this VAT was imposed, then the price of fuel was under 100.
Honorable Ruto, when the VAT was imposed, it was at the time a condition by IMF when we were seeking a precautionary facility. Today we find ourselves in the exact same position with a third tranche of an IMF facility, and once again they are calling for the same issue that we are facing with VAT then is the same one we are facing now. And at the point, IMF has in fact said that we do not need to be removing taxes on petroleum products. So with an IMF facility already in place, are you then saying you are going to go back to the IMF and renegotiate the terms of that loan that is already in place regarding IMF VAT on fuel products?
What's wrong with negotiating with IMF? I think any reasonable government, looking at the situation where we are, looking at the cost of living and how many Kenyans are every day sinking below the poverty line, I think it takes a courageous government to sit down with our development partners, and they are fairly reasonable people, and have a discussion. And I think they are, if not 8%, we need to renegotiate on some of the items that are outstanding. And apart from looking at that, there are other instruments that we can deploy. For example, we have the fuel subsidy fund. We need to think about how that fund is being used, how we are deploying it. Are we deploying it correctly? Is it giving us value? And what changes can be made? We need an open and frank conversation with our development partners who support us. And to the best of my knowledge, they are not unreasonable. They are reasonable people, and they can entertain a conversation on negotiating some of the terms that have been offered to us.
Honorable Ruto, I think that will take us into our second conversation tonight, and that is on the issue of national debt. And I'd like to pick up just where you left off. You say our partners, are open to renegotiation. However, on the matter of renegotiating our debt, Honorable Ruto, you just last week in an interview with the international press said you will not be entertaining discussions around renegotiating our debt. In fact, with respect to your competitor who is not here with us today, when he brought up the issue, you in fact called his statement on that condescending and reckless. Mr. Deputy President, are you tonight changing your position and saying you will renegotiate and seek to restructure our debt?
Not at all. I still believe, as I stand here, that it is reckless for anybody to say we cannot pay our debts. I believe that we have what it takes to pay our debts. And mark you, what we were discussing about VAT is very different from negotiating our debts.
But it is tied to the IMF facility, which is a loan.
It's completely different.
How so?
What we cannot entertain as a country is a position that we cannot pay. We are in a position that we can't service our debt. We cannot. We need to go out there and renegotiate our debt. I think that would send the wrong signal. What I would do on matters to do with the debt, we have a plan as Kenya Kwanza on how to manage debt. Number one, we have said we will first slow down, put the brakes on borrowing. Number two, we will put brakes on unbudgeted projects. In fact, that is the biggest source of our problem. Projects that are not within the budget, so that we cannot keep our fiscal deficit at what we have committed, 5% or 5.9%. Number three, we need to raise our revenues. And I have said openly that we have areas that we believe that we can raise our revenue. For example, we collect 52% of all collectible VAT. Just by automation and computerization, we can actually raise 95% of all collectible VAT. That would give us an extra 450 billion Kenya shillings. And added on to that, if you raise that kind of VAT, you can equally raise from corporate tax an additional 200, maybe 150 billion shillings. So there is room to raise additional funding, additional revenue for us to manage our debt without necessarily going to say we're going to negotiate our debt.
So I hear you saying that our national debt as it stands today is manageable.
Our debt today is a challenge. We need to deal with it. It's not We are not sitting pretty. We are living, if I may say, we are living beyond our means. And that is why I am saying that we should stop this borrowing spree. Let me give you, in our first term, we borrowed 2.2 trillion. From 2017, our handshake brothers have borrowed 4.2 trillion. That's what the source of concern. And it's not a source of concern to me. It's a source of concern to Kenyans as well. And it's even a source of concern to our development partners. They are beginning to raise issues about our debt. And more so, the trajectory of continued borrowing. So that's why I'm saying our administration will first slow down on borrowing, remove unbudgeted projects, because that's the biggest incentive, and then go back to raising our own revenue.
Do you have figures that you are targeting when you say remove unbudgeted projects? How much are we talking about? When you say slow down on borrowing, from what amount to what amount are you talking about?
When you look at our fiscal deficit, right, there are too many projects that are not in the that are not budgeted for. For example, the Uhuru Gardens Museum. You don't see it anywhere in government budgets, but it's been built. So these are the kind of projects.
Do you know how much? That, for example, in the last financial year,
we've spent close to 15 billion in that project.
In the last financial year, Honorable Deputy President,
yes.
Do you know how much of unbudgeted projects?
Actually, unbudgeted projects are in the region of 100 billion. Unbudgeted projects. And that is what is spiraling our borrowing. And I'm saying that our first, and that's why if you go today to the website of the Ministry of Finance, you will hardly find any paperwork there. You will hardly find any, because there are too many projects that cannot be accounted for, that are being done without a budget line. If you look at the expenditure on contingency fund, which is supposed to spend only up to 5% of the budget, sometimes it goes to 50% of the budget. So that is where we need to apply the brakes. And we are saying clearly, we not only have a plan on slowing down on borrowing, we also have a plan on raising revenue in targeted areas. Areas that would give us much more resources to run our budget, number one, and two, to also manage our repayment. And in that particular instance, you may want to know